All right, guys, today we're going to talk a little bit about propaganda, which is closely related to bias, but still very, very different. So, to start with, propaganda is the systematic spreading of beliefs through a combination of facts, opinions disguised as facts, deliberate distortion of the facts, and repetition. So, propaganda typically has a bias, and that bias is very, very strong. And then that bias is attempting to push that bias and push that opinion out on other people that are viewing the propaganda. So similar to advertisements, they are selling something, but it's less that they're selling a product or an idea, and more so they're trying to change the way people think. They're trying to change people's minds permanently, and a lot of times that kind of propaganda has to do with some kind of political party or political leaning, whether it be Republicans and Democrats, conservative liberals. Nazi Germany was famous for utilizing propaganda to get the country on the side of Hitler. A propaganda technique. So the first one we're going to talk about is name calling, also known as mudslinging, and it's the most basic kind you can have. It's pointing out negative qualities of the opposition while ignoring some of those positive qualities that they may have. It can be literal name calling, like calling somebody an idiot, or it can be branding them as a liar. It can be very subtle as well, using words with negative connotations to kind of tear down the opponent. So instead of calling them economical, saying that they're good with their money, we can say they're cheap. They're not willing to spend where they need to spend. Finally, name calling can point out negative actions or characteristics of an opponent. Bandwagoning, right? So when we think of bandwagoning, we think of the Eagles a couple years ago when they won the Super Bowl and everybody was an Eagles fan. Well, that's kind of similar. So bandwagoning in terms of propaganda is influencing people by implying that everyone supports a given position. It really focuses on peer pressure. However, a lot of times the rush to jump on the bandwagon, quote unquote, isn't quite as quite as popular as they want you to think. So social media is a great example of that. A lot of times, a company will post something on social media. They'll have bots, fake accounts. They'll pay people to come in and like or favorite that post to try to get more eyes on it, even though these people aren't real. Right. So a lot of times bandwagoning can be manipulating what people think and pressuring people because everybody's doing it, even when not everybody's doing it. Diversion, also known as a red herring, is just distracting the audience from the facts with facts and details that are not relevant to the argument. So, a political candidate who's not necessarily very strong in foreign policy might try to change the topic to something they are strong in, maybe education or the economy or something along those lines. A lot of times, diversion will make some kind of emotional appeal in order to distract the audience from the real debate. Or they will try to make the opponent appear unfavorable and therefore make their opinion unfavorable. Right? If you don't like the person, you're probably not going to like what they think or what they have to say. And then we have emotional appeal. And emotional appeal kind of goes back to advertisements. We talked about pathos. Emotional appeal is just using people's feelings to distract them from unfavorable things or draw attention to favorable things. They don't always have to be sad or sympathetic. It doesn't have to be the puppy, in the SPCA. It can be anger, joy, humor. As long as it's making somebody feel something, that is an emotional appeal. A testimonial is using endorsements from celebrities or other people to convince an audience that the product is associated with success. So this goes back to the ethos that we talked about with advertisements as well. And just like that ethos, testimonials don't always have to use celebrities. They can just be people that look like they know what they're talking about, right? You get an actor, you put a white jacket on him, you give him a clipboard and a stethoscope, all of a sudden he's a medical expert, right? So as long as they look like they know what they're talking about, that's really all that matters. Sometimes, though, there are celebrity endorsements that kind of backfire or that don't make sense. For example, a couple years, or I guess 3 or 4 years ago now, when Hillary Clinton was running for president, Lady Gaga came out and supported her campaign. But a lot of people kind of poked holes in that support because they were like, Lady Gaga doesn't know anything about politics. Why does her opinion matter? So a lot of times testimonials can be hit or miss. Another example is repetition. It's literally just saying the same thing over and over and over again, whether that be a message, whether that be a word or a catchphrase. As long as you say it over and over and over again, it's going to make an impression. It's going to get stuck in somebody's head, right? Think about the jingle or the ad or the catchphrase that you've had stuck in your head for a couple of days after seeing a commercial. It gets to the point where it's almost annoying, but it's still there and it's still sticking with you. And as long as that message is still in your head, the propaganda is being effective. A sweeping generalization is just it's also known as stereotyping, and it's basically just taking characteristics of a large group and applying that to an individual that belongs to that group. So, for example, assuming that all guys drive trucks and drink beer and eat bacon, or that all girls wear makeup all the time. That's not necessarily true. Sweeping generalization can be very dangerous for a company, because if you generalize too broadly, you're going to cut off a large section of your market base, or the people that you're trying to affect. If I say that all guys like to drink beer and drive trucks and eat bacon, then the guys that don't do those things are going to feel cut off, are going to feel disconnected from that product, and they're not going to want to buy the product, or they're not going to want to buy into the propaganda. So sweeping generalization usually has to be very basic, because if it gets any more complex than that, it's going to cut some people off. Another one here is circular argument, which it's a little confusing when you think about the definition, but looking at an example makes a little more sense. So states a conclusion as proof of the truthfulness of a statement. Basically saying that something is true because it is, right? Not having any evidence to back it up, just saying it's true because I said it's true, and I say it's true because it's true. Or something like the second example here. I am successful because I am the most talented, and I know I am the most talented because I am successful. Well, one's got to cause the other. It's a chicken or the egg type situation. You can't just keep going in a loop like that. So circular argument is definitely a propaganda technique, although it's one that doesn't necessarily make the most sense. And then finally, here we have we have an appeal to numbers, facts, or statistics, which is just presenting data out of context in place of actual evidence. We talk about how important it is to have data, to have facts to back you up. But a lot of times those facts and data can be manipulated and used in whatever way you want them to be used. If you cite irrelevant data to prove a point, then you're citing inaccurate data to back up your argument. But if people aren't going to fact check you, then your argument stands, unfortunately. So, for example, if I say 75% of students believe the test was too hard, that doesn't mean that the test was too hard. It just means that those students didn't study for the test as well as they should have. So, people can use facts to their advantage however they see fit. All right, so what we're going to do this week is we're going to create our own propaganda. And basically what you're going to do is just develop a slideshow storyboard on Schoology, on Google Slides, that is going to have a couple different scenes of propaganda for a particular product or an idea or a political candidate of your own design. I would ask you to just not use a real life product, because then you can't use real life advertisements. But if you want to make a cheesy knockoff of a product, that's totally fine. Just make sure that it's not a real product. Your storyboard is going to have at least 5 slides, and I have a template set up for you on Schoology in the Week of 5-4 folder, in the propaganda section of that folder. And it's already set up. It's got all the slides set. You just need to fill them in. So it's going to have 5 slides. You got to have 5 different of these propaganda techniques that we just talked about, right? Appeal to facts and statistics, circular argument, sweeping generalization, repetition, whatever one you want to do. You got to pick 5 of those. And then use that throughout the course of your advertisement for your product. Each slide must contain an image of what you would show on the screen. So if you're putting together a commercial, for example, as well as the dialogue that would be used. You may use images from the internet as long as they're not screenshots from the commercial or from a commercial. Each slide must also include what technique is being used, if there is a technique being used on that slide, as well as an explanation of how that technique is being used. And all that stuff is there. You just need to fill in the blanks. So here's an example of one. This is a product ad that I made up. So we've got a picture of Michael Phelps here, and then I have the dialogue. 23-time Olympic gold medal winner and breakfast fan Michael Phelps never starts his day without a big bowl of Olympios, and neither should you if you want to be an Olympian at whatever you do. The technique I'm using is testimonial. I have Michael Phelps on the screen saying that he eats this particular cereal, and therefore that helps him become more successful. Another one for the same product. would be this. So I have a very scientific image on the screen. My dialogue is, according to 9 out of 10 professional dietitians, Olympios provides you with 10 grams of protein for strong muscles and carbohydrates to give you energy. The technique I'm using is an appeal to facts or statistics. I'm providing a very scientific thing. I'm using a statistic. This could also be, this could also be the ethos part of it, right? The the authority, having a spokesperson. All right, if I'm saying 9 out of 10 professional dietitians agree with it, but it can go either way. And then here's an example of a political ad if you wanted to do a political ad. So I have this very patriotic picture on the side. The dialogue here is, this November, vote for Tom Thompson for governor of Pennsylvania. When he served in the Navy SEALs, Thompson led his team on a number of covert missions to defend the rights and freedoms of U.S. citizens like you. Now he wants to fight for those same rights and freedoms in Washington. Tom Thompson is a true American and is going to fight for true Americans. The technique I'm using here is emotional appeal. I'm appealing to people's sense of patriotism, referring to phrases like true Americans, using this imagery of the American flag, the Navy SEAL insignia, appealing to that sense of patriotism, of nationalism in the United States. Then here's one more for the political ad. I have a picture of President Trump, and he's saying, hi, I'm President Donald J. Trump, and I support Tom Thompson for governor of Pennsylvania. He's a strong leader and willing to make the tough choices for the sake of the great Keystone State. The technique I'm using here is testimonial. By having the President of the United States speak in support of the candidate, it shows that the most powerful person in the government supports this candidate, and you should too. All right, so I have these sample slides attached in Schoology as well that you can use as a basis, but please do not copy these in particular. The assignment itself is in the Week of 5-4 folder as well. And everything else you need is in that folder, in the propaganda section of that folder. So if you have any questions, please email me or see me in the Google